Hey there, listeners. It's me, Greg, your host, and I'm just going to get into things real quick because I've made you wait long enough for episode 201. I mean, it's only been like an extra week and a half, whatever, but still, long enough. Thank you for your patience on this little hiatus. There is a lot of news to cover, which is also partly why I'm not going to go into it too deeply. A lot's happened since episode 199. I didn't do anything on 200 because it was a lot to put that episode together, a big learning moment for me, and I thank everybody for their patience. I would like to have done this before that episode just to thank them for you all for listening and for being gracious with the video and how it all turned out. Overall, I'm okay with it. I wanted to put in more bells and whistles, and I don't like that my light vanished by the end of it. It was a rookie mistake on my part. I should know better as a filmmaker. At any rate, all good learning experiences. I hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that we can maybe do another one again. Any rate, lots has happened. We've got a couple crowdfunding chronicles from Tina. We've had a multitude of fantastic features. Mark Chan has kept up with the Flashback Friday series as well, so plenty of interesting feature content. The site has just been pumping out thanks to Zach Wilkerson's great job of helming that department now. Over in reviews, Jono's been, cracking the whip because we have had so many reviews come out. Like, there's been a lot of games dropped. Everyone's been playing like mad. I don't know how everyone plays so fast. It's just baffling. I mean, I'm still talking about Torchlight 3 on this episode, and it should be done by the time we get to 202. But a lot of great reviews, a couple DLCs came out. Also a couple previews of Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory demo and the early impressions of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity demo. So go check those out too to see how things are shaping up for both of those. There's so much going on. And Adam Lurs contributed with a music review. Finally got a new music review of the Another Eden soundtrack. Everyone remember that awesome mobile gacha RPG? Another Eden, the cat beyond space and time. Well, we finally got their soundtrack. Adam took a listen to it. It's got some beautiful music. I got a little bit in the background. You got some fantastic people on there, like Yasunori Mitsuda. So, I mean, go give it a listen. Go read the review. And otherwise, enjoy episode 201. Hey everybody, we're back. Thank you for hanging out while we had a brief little hiatus after episode 200. There's just lots going on at the site. I personally just wanted a break. We wanted to take a look at how the podcast can move forward now, 200 episodes, 10 years later. It's not going to shake up too much, but we want to do things a little bit more tight, to the point, so that way the random discussion that can happen, I guess, gets a bit more time to breathe, and none of us ever feel panicked to round things off real quick when it starts creeping up on 2 hours on the regular basis. So in that spirit, enjoy what's to come. So I am, as always, joined by my lovely co-host Jono Logan. Jono, say hi to the people.
But how will they know I'm lovely if we're not on video anymore?
They can go back. That's the best part of the video, is now we have that one video that is recorded for posterity. So 10 years from now, you're going to look like that as far as anyone knows.
You're right. This is perfect. That's why my headshot I still use is from like 2009.
Totally look like that. Totally. Let's just go with this as my casting.
To be fair, I did look like that before the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, I do miss my gym visits. That's for sure. The COVID apathy is real. I've been trying to get back into a new routine, but it's still hard. Self-motivation at home is a different beast, but I'm glad I still have stuff to work with here. So anyways, all that being said, thanks for being back on, Jono, who I assure everyone is quite handsome and a delightful human.
Aw.
Also a delightful human, and, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because that just puts foots in my mouth that I'm not going to bother with. But delightful human all the same. Caitlin Argyros is finally back on the podcast.
Hey, it's been a while, hasn't it? Hey, guys.
It has been.
Hey. Last time you were on, you weren't even with us.
That's true.
Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah, last time it was with us was the last Cold Steel.
Wait, really? It was that long?
I think so. I feel like I can't think if you've been on more recently.
Well, then it's, I guess, good that I'm talking about Cold Steel this time too. Like,
Just keeping the continuity. I mean, we can expect one or the other from you if it's Cold Steel. If it's not Cold Steel, it'll
it's
be
Final Fantasy
FF14.
Yeah. I'm a two-trick pony, apparently. I guess. I don't know.
No. Yeah, actually, you're not a two-trick pony. Looking at this, the last time you were on, you were talking about Shadowbringers 5.2.
Oh, okay. That makes
All right,
that makes more sense. I was like, I'm pretty sure I talked about something to do with Final Fantasy 14 in between now and last October.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a blur, but yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, it's good to have you back. I miss chatting with you, so I'm glad to have your voice back on the podcast.
Yeah, same to you guys.
Yay.
Yeah, you plowed through quite a few games since the last time you were on here, so... But we're not going to talk about the big one.
Yeah.
And maybe touch upon another little one.
Yeah, we can touch on those things as well. But yeah, that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about games and the weather and cork floorboards, apparently. That's what has been really happening in the past year at Random Encounter.
Yeah, it was 20 degrees here in Toronto today.
There we go. See, we got to talk about the weather, right? Because that's what everyone's here to see. And
20 degrees Celsius. What would that be in Fahrenheit? I have no idea.
I think that would be nice, right?
It would be, yeah, nice fall day.
Yeah.
Really nice fall day.
Caitlin's the librarian in the room. I just expect her to be the Dewey Decimal card catalog and can answer all questions for us, right? You're our encyclopedia.
I mean, about books, but I have to do mental math when it comes to temperature conversions myself. All I know is that above 30 is not comfortable at all in Celsius. That's that and that 0 Celsius is freezing Fahrenheit. I mean, like, come on, yeah.
But we've all got some recent releases that we've been playing. Me less so. When we last left off on our podcast, our big episode 200, I was talking about my experiences with Torchlight very loosely and vaguely because I really hadn't gotten into the core concepts and been super deep into my note taking and stuff yet. I don't know if this holds true for everybody else. I mean, I do take my notes on the fly while I'm kind of playing, but I usually try and commit to like the first hour or so unless something major happens that I know I won't remember, whatever, like just kind of without taking notes yet, just to kind of get an undiluted, uninterrupted experience. Mm-hmm. Does that hold true for either of you?
Usually I'm really into notes for like the first, I don't know, couple hours of playing a game, and then if it's a good game, I sort of stop taking notes because I'm getting into the game, and that's how I know it's probably going to be a well-scored game, because if I forget to take notes, then it means I'm getting engaged with it. If I keep taking like copious amounts of notes nonstop, then it's more of an academic exercise.
Yeah, I guess I sporadically take notes. I set up my categories before I start playing, and then every once in a while I'll be like, Caitlin, you have not written any notes about this game yet. Maybe I should jot a few things down. And then I do that, and then I usually forget about it for, another couple nights, and then scribble on some more notes. I mean, if anything pops out at me while I'm playing, and I'm like, okay, definitely need to mention that, or that's definitely something interesting or bad or good or really good, then I'll take note of it. But I don't like, strenuously notate everything, that I see or that stands out to me unless it's like really important.
Yeah, then that's probably how most of us do it. I've just noticed, and I find that's also more so with when I'm playing games on PC too, because I can take for granted that I just alt tab between the two things, between my Word document and back into the game. So it's very easy for me to forget that I'm like, right, I have a document open and I should take notes, because it's so easy because I can just type them up there as opposed to opening up Google Keep on my phone and taking notes when I'm playing on console. That I feel like I'm much more aware of having the phone and having that there. I don't know what it is, but at any rate. And then I'm also, for at least myself being on the video team, I'm also constantly trying to take moments of like, I should record this moment because that was a cool thing, or I should go back and reenact this sequence, or all that sort of stuff. Is just there's a lot going on. Keelan, you get it. We've asked you about video stuff before, and sometimes you're on and sometimes you're just like, no, not anymore, I'm done.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to. But yes, Torchlight 3 is still going strong. It's more of the same. I can't remember, Jono. I know Mike has played Torchlight 1 and 2 pretty thoroughly. Me, I've only played Torchlight 2. Had you played either of the first two?
Yeah, I played both of them, actually. I was a fan of... Torchlight 1 was a fun little diversion. It was a cute little kind of Diablo-esque game. I thought Torchlight 2 was fantastic.
It did, yeah.
Fantastic.
Hit its stride.
Yeah, it really hit its stride. Really felt like on par with Diablo in a lot of ways. A much more cartoony version. But it does sound like the version that you're playing right now, the third one, is not quite measuring up to it.
Not quite. And just before I go into that, Caitlin, have you played either?
I have not. I've heard about it a lot, but I've never tried it.
Yeah, I've never heard you speak of it or of Diablo in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm not especially a Diablo kind of person. I think I've dabbled occasionally with Diablo-like games, but I'm not usually a...
The loot hack?
Yeah.
It's okay, yeah. I didn't think it was in your wheelhouse, so I was going to be mildly surprised, and that'd be a fun conversation topic. So, you are on par with my thoughts, with where I thought you landed with it. But yeah, like Jono was saying, with me, yeah, I'm still kind of lukewarm on it. It is more of the same, but like, again, there was something they were hitting just right with 2, and I think a lot of it comes down to the problems with 3 is what Mike was speaking about, is just the issues with the development period.
It's not a single player game. It's a single player game that was made out of a multiplayer.
And that's what I'm now getting more and more confirmed the more I go in. But since we last talked about it on 200, I tried another class because I wanted to try the multiplayer thing. I cannot remember. I'm pretty certain in Torchlight 2 you could use your single player character in a multiplayer instance. Is that correct? Do you remember?
I have no idea because I have old multiplayer games like the plague.
Oh, fair enough. Well, for me it was... I'm concerned I was mixing it with Diablo because I knew that was definitely a thing. You could take your single player character and play it in multiplayer. But in Torchlight 3, they're completely separate entities, which is kind of annoying because I want to take my established sharpshooter that I'm a high level with and I've already progressed a certain way through the story over to multiplayer and join in some games and progress through quests with people there. But no, I have to start again from square one with a new character and then plow through the story again that way, which is kind of annoying and tedious because the story's not that great. And it's just a lot of repetition in the gameplay. Yeah, and also the matchmaking is very weird and clunky, and it makes me miss BattleNet.
Okay.
Wait,
well,
really?
It makes me miss, as I'm sure you both have played the multiplayer games where it takes you into an instance of like basically a chat room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't really have that. At first I didn't know how or where. There's no clear indication. You just start multiplayer and it throws you into the game the exact same way it starts in single player. So I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I ended up having to look online how to figure out how to do it. There is one extra menu option once you go into the menu where you can look up like player profiles or whatever, so you can see who is in the hub town with you at that moment. And so when you go back to the hub town, you'll see other characters running around, and you can do an all chat to all of them and whatever. And then you can pull up that profile thing and see who's doing what. But you both have to be playing on the same difficulty setting in order to play. And I keep seeing people either playing on ridiculous, which is the hardest setting, or on the basic setting of normal. And I had stupidly chosen, apparently, to play on hard. And I've seen one other player since who's playing on hard. So I haven't been able to match up with anybody. And again, since you just kind of have to all shout at everybody and just be like, hey, who wants to play together, or who wants to do something, or just like forcefully invite yourself to someone and hope they accept. Like it just seems like there's not a lot of the social aspect to it. And that's unfortunate because, yeah, a lot of the joy from those games, I do remember sitting either on LAN or a multiplayer playing with a friend over BattleNet and Diablo, or a few times I did pick up with somebody in Torchlight 2 as well. And it's more fun when you can tag team out combos and have different people attacking different ways and stuff like that. Like you can have a sharpshooter doing range stuff while you have a forged up in the front, which is what I selected. I went with the forged, so I tried out the little build your own robot is basically that kind of class.
It's I understand why they don't allow single player characters to transfer over to the multiplayer realm, because there's no guarantee that the person hasn't hacked their character or they haven't They haven't used cheats to get extra buffs or get like the best gear. So I get
maybe
why that's the case, but at the same time, you put a lot of effort into something like that. You really do want to be able to take it with you.
And I get with these games, there's a lot of that D&D crossover where some of the most fun parts of D&D is just making characters. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure people like just generating a new character and getting into it. But one thing also I've discovered as I've been playing through now, further into the world, into the story, into the game, is it's broken up into levels that are all kind of like the flavor of the stage, like flavor of the game kind of thing. Like I do, again, remember from Diablo 1, Diablo 2, you did go to different hub towns, which gave you a different sort of flair. Like you had the first one was very much in the graveyards and the marshes and stuff. And then I think the second town in Diablo 2 was the desert one. And then the third one was a jungle. And that's cool because it gives you, a nice change of pace, a nice change of scenery. Generally, the mobs change enough with a few palette swaps here and there. But it provided enough variety and to keep the game interesting and whatnot. And in this version, it does that much. It's nice to have a change of scenery, sure. But I find the new mobs, they definitely don't have the variety. So the first stage, all you're fighting is goblins, and then you start fighting just a different color of goblins. Some of the goblins might have guns, some might have bombs, some are just the same goblins. And that's basically all you do for a good, first 2 hours is you're just constantly clicking on goblins. So it gets a bit tired. And then the second one right now, you're in a swampy marsh. Very cool. But you're just clicking on
goblins.
Bunches of bugs, but also goblins. Yeah, there's infected goblins, which is neat because they're trying to make it like, these bugs are kind of invading the territory and taking things over. And so you can see like all the creepy marshy bug stuff that has overtaken goblin villages here and there. But it's clear this land is very much riddled with goblins. And there's not a lot of variety in the mobs, so it just gets tired. It's like, more spiders, but now instead of being fire spitting spiders, these spiders spit poison. So it's just a palette swap with a thing, and that's where I get into the flavor of it, because in that first stage, all the elements of the monsters were all fire element, and now I'm in like the poison stage. I haven't quite determined if that also means they have a strength towards those elements, but it means like all the gear you're getting was simply protection from fire, protection from fire, protection from fire. And now I'm getting mostly protection from poison with the odd fire one thrown in. And then my weapons, I'll get, the variety of fire elemental, poison elemental, nether, all the different stuff. But my character is built, as I said in the 200, I had the item, the relic that lets me like use poison, and every time I do poison damage, it summons little spiders. So I'm kind of like the people who play Diablo 2 know they're necromancers who summon things. I basically made my sharpshooter to be a summoner. So I get like a wolf companion I can summon whenever I do damage. I'm summoning like these hordes of little spiders that come out of the ground for a little while, and they're poison, basically like poison cloud spiders, and I can summon bigger ones. So I just have this horde of mobs that can keep things at bay while I can sit back and shoot them if I want, which is very neat, and it's a cool thing. But then I'm like, well, now I'm in the poison stage, and I feel like, are they as effective? I don't know. And when everything's just all poison all the time, I feel like it takes some of the strategy out of how you build your character and construct things based on your gear. Because I said you don't really get to customize your characters now when you level up by getting attributes and stuff. It's all in the gear you get, but there's no strategy to being like, I want to build my person to have really good defense against, fire and have strong poison attacks so they can poison foes, which, I might get, hindered by the odd poison character I come across, but for most of the time, I'll be able to be effective against everything. Whereas in this one, it's weird how they kind of did the power balance, the power creep. It kind of feels, like you're just running through the numbers and just clicking just to get through it kind of thing. Because it's taken that aspect of the strategy out of it.
It's a shame because I really enjoy Diablo games and this style of games, but I actually don't even know how to put this into words. There's a certain X factor in these games that keeps them active and involved, even though technically you're just clicking things with your mouse.
Yeah.
And if that X factor isn't there, it literally becomes almost like a graphic version of a spreadsheet. Like you're literally just click, 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 rather than being super engaged with what's happening.
My first run of Diablo 2, I was super into playing a sorceress, and I went like all ice,
Mm-hmm.
which was terrible because I got to the final boss, I think, of the desert level, and has protection from ice. So my spells were awful, and I had to respec a little bit. And that's one thing that's good about this game is you can respec very easily. Like I remember I put some points into you could summon ghostly goblins. So then I was able to respec that, which is neat. But again, I still find, and that's, I mean, Caitlin, you could probably speak to this in Final Fantasy 14. You do get into a routine where you're just kind of using the same key combinations over and over and over again, really, especially in like a big raid boss fight.
Oh yeah, I mean,
There's not a lot of variety and flair.
Yeah, well, yeah, and like, most of the fights are designed on a set schedule of moves, and once you know what the pattern is, like, oh, I have to do this here, or especially for like, I main healers, so a lot of healing is knowing when damage is coming out and the bare minimum you have to do to respond to it and keep people alive. So there is a lot of like that, just memorize this and then, profit.
Yeah. And this kind of has a bit of that too, just without the epicness of the stories and the monsters to fight. I don't know. I feel like it's just that like it's overstaying its welcome a little bit. Like it just feels like the levels are a bit too long. Because I initially saw the first map and I was like, oh cool, is this all this game is? I just go through this. I mean, it's kind of boring that it's mostly the same mobs. Maybe things will get a bit interesting. But as I got near the end of that first map, I was kind of seeing that there was another map coming up, and then you get a big story beat where it reveals like the big bad, and the big bad has 3 subordinates, so you very quickly see telegraphed what the shape of the game is going to be. There'll be a big bad per map. Each map is going to have a different flavor, and then you face off against the final boss, and there we go. So, yeah, there's just not enough, I guess, compelling story-wise to lure me in. Like everything seems to be that dropped in story beats is you're talking just to the characters, who it's mostly just like, go do this next thing. As soon as you've completed a quest, you've completed a quest. You have a new quest. And you're just doing that, going. There's not a lot of... it's very linear. And any additional story beats, there's these things called echo nodes, where it seems like the bosses have basically left a memo. And it's pretty simple story writing, as you can see a bit of friction between them. It's, a bit of the Sith kind of thing, where eventually the proteges want to take over the master, and it's all very... Yeah, I feel like I'm not going to have much in the way of surprises, but I do love the art in the story beats. They once again brought back like those great kind of like comic-y sort of panels. So that's really nice to look forward to and see how that gets interpreted. But otherwise, yeah, I feel like I'm already done with it, and I can probably write about it because I can likely figure out where it's going to go, but, the proper reviewer in me wants to finish the story so I can give a complete analysis of how the story shapes up and see if things get a bit more interesting, as we do and as we should.
As we should, yes.
Yeah. So either way, I'm kind of enjoying the satisfaction of clicking on things and making them blow up and stuff like that. But there's some times where I'm just like, I don't want to click on more things. It feels like this was originally supposed to be that massive multiplayer online thing, which apparently Torchlight 2 was supposed to be as well, and then they ended up canning that at the last second. Seems to be part of Torchlight's storied history. But like I was saying, there's like the fort thing. It seems to have like, oh, you put stuff in to chop wood into wooden planks, and then it has a timer of like a minute, and they have to come back, which is annoyingly short and tedious. That really, like, why even do it that way? Because it's so short that by that point you're already gone and locked into an adventure, and probably don't want a town portal back there just for that anyways. And then in your base you have certain things that you can put stuff into to improve them, so it goes from a +1 bonus to gold gain to a +2 bonus, or a +1 bonus to poison resistance to a +2 bonus. So there's a lot of like those gacha kind of feed into things based on the multitude of currencies that you generally get in those kinds of games. And I'm definitely starting to see more and more that those holdovers are definitely there, and they tried to kind of keep them in, but they feel very tacked on. And then again, it's just that satisfaction of, ooh, I put things in and shiny stuff's happened. So it's definitely doing the right things to my brain that it should, but it just feels like, is that supposed to be, like, I feel like there just would have been more interesting, engaging ways to do it. Like, I miss fishing. I thought that was fun. I like the reward of getting the fish that you could then mutate your companion beast into. That was kind of neat. All I know is I still like that I can swap out my monsters I've got dragons that can summon skeletons now. I got a wolf that farts. That was funny.
What?
It basically
Farting wolf.
For like its attack or?
It's, I think I said in 200, it seemed like whenever you got a new pet from a boss fight, you could choose to keep it or swap it out or release it. And all of them came with different, they each have like their one-shot kind of ability to do. Like they'll buff your party, buff themselves. Sometimes they'll have an attack. Like I said, there's a dragon. It would summon 2 skeletons was its thing, and then it would cool down and refresh and would do it again eventually. And one of these wolves I got, its attack, it says it would basically like release a stink cloud from itself, which was kind of funny. You would see it howl and the stink cloud would come and it obviously would poison an enemy, but the thing was always would do it as soon as it saw an enemy, and then we would run to attack it, so nothing would ever come towards it into its stink cloud. It was funny idea, poorly implemented, but anyways, I appreciate where they're going with that. But that wolf's on the bench now, we'll just say.
Can it poison you if you get hit by it, or?
Thankfully, no. It doesn't seem to be friendly fire with that stuff.
Okay. That'd be hilarious if it did, though.
That would have been. Yeah. Stupid stinky wolf. Like, it's not a bad game, like, so far. Like, it's well made in its way. There is a bit of, like, glitchy gankiness I've seen here and there, and I've had, like, the Warforged, or the Forged. Now I'm mincing with Faerun. The Forged, I had a legendary mace, which also, I don't know what horseshoe I shoved up my Forged's butt, but I, within like my first 10 levels, I already earned like 10 different legendary items that I just found in the game. I don't know what it was, which is great because every time you find a legendary item, you can equip it, of course, and get the benefits of it, or it goes in your legendarium, and you can equip it so you always have that ability, even if you're not using the weapon.
Oh.
And then as you level up, you unlock more of those slots, which my sharpshooter just got, so I now have 2 of those. So that's kind of neat, and I like that. And then eventually you'll find newer versions of those legendary items, because obviously if you found it when it's like a level 3 item, its attack's going to be lousy if you try to persistently use it throughout the game, which is why they let you keep the ability, but not... You can toss the weapon if you want.
So you've heard it here first. If you really want your robot to kick butt, you just shove a horseshoe up its butt.
Right, exactly. So I just found a whole bunch of items, but one of the ones, I had, that's the whole point. I had a mace, but it wasn't doing its attack animation, which was weird. Things were just dying in front of me while it just kind of stared at them. It was really weird. And then I'd have to like unequip it, re-equip it with something else, re-equip it again, and then it would do it for a while, and then it would lose the animation again. It was weird.
It just has this presence. It doesn't have to hit enemies. It just, they look at it and they die.
Right, exactly. And I was this close. One of the default names that comes up in the randomizer was Rosie, and I just couldn't help but just be like, "I'm here for you, Mr. J." Smacking things.
Aww.
Different Mr. J, different sassy character. All that being said, Caitlin, aside from the big elephant in the room, since we were just talking about gacha stuff, you've been gacha'd.
Oh yes, I got.
What did you gotted by? I'm sorry, everybody.
Well, I've been playing the crap out of Genshin Impact, which is...
how's that?
This is the new action RPG from MiHoYo. It's on mobile, it's on PC, it's on PS4, and it is... Well, I freaking love it, which is surprising for me to say because despite having a folder full of different, a few paid but mostly free-to-play games like, Dragalia Lost and whatnot like that I actually have never really even opened. I all these games I have in my folder, like on my phone and my iPad, I don't really play. I have them. I've had KOTOR on my mobile devices forever, and I've never booted it up, which shows how awful I am, because why wouldn't I play KOTOR? Again, I played it, guys, I played it on Xbox, anyway.
I figure, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a lot of games I've been there, but I've never been interested enough to play more than, like, to check them out or whatnot. But I've been playing Genshin Impact like pretty much every day, at least doing like a few
Just
daily
burning
things.
out your iPad?
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately my iPad doesn't last very long with a game like this, but it's very
What
impressive. iPad Mini, the latest iPad Mini, which I'm hoping they will update sometime next year, because They just updated the airs to look like the pros, and they look really sexy, and I want that in a smaller form factor. Apple, please.
I would be stunned, but this is not an Apple podcast.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway,
we're not on Relay FM.
So it's really good in my humble opinion. First of all, it looks really good. This does not look like your typical free-to-play RPG, a lot of, which they have really good art style, but a lot of free-to-play RPGs tend to be like, 2D or sprites, that kind of thing. They
gimmick it up somehow, yeah.
Yeah, they don't
I think Dragalia has been the most impressive to me up until this point.
Yeah, I mean, they typically look like what you expect from a mobile game. They don't look like a game that you would be at home on a console or on PC or with other
blowing $80 on.
yeah, and that's kind of the thing, is that I'm surprised a game like this. I mean, obviously it has gacha mechanics. You can totally spend a crap ton of money. I've seen people who have gone crazy trying to get characters and spent a snap ton of money. I have not spent a penny yet, but I don't also usually feel tempted to do that on any free-to-play games that I check out. But the overall look of the game just feels like I'm amazed this is a free-to-play game, that they didn't want to charge like a nominal fee to get it, because I don't feel like I'm playing a mobile game when I play this. I feel like I'm playing a cool action RPG that's very definitely, I think, inspired by Breath of the Wild. You can sort of get the same kind of feel with the open world, where you can go just about anywhere, you can climb just about anything. You have kind of a similar feel. You can go collect food items and cook, and there are monsters that are not the same, of course, but you kind of get a similar feel to it. But I would not say that it's like a soulless clone, and that it's just trying to ape what Breath of the Wild did. Honestly, I would actually, my controversial statement that I guess people will probably want to fight me on, is that I actually like it a lot more than Breath of the Wild.
Huh. We'll give you our email address later where you can send the pitchforks, everybody.
Well, thank you for coming on, Caitlin.
Yes, my return was short-lived before I got exposed as a fraud. Because how dare I say that something's better than Breath of the Wild?
Right. Well, I was gonna say though, so Genshin Impact doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like the Dark Cloud to Ocarina of Time sort of situation. It actually is surpassing in the Zelda killer.
I think so, but to be fair, I didn't like Breath of the Wild very much, and I'm not a huge Zelda fan. I played
more like Breath of the Hot Air.
Yeah. I mean, I played it. I like it well enough. I don't think it's amazing. There are things people love about it that I absolutely hate. Genshin Impact, for me at least, does those things better. Like we could discuss this more in depth and go on and on.
Yeah. But
but like, for instance, I utterly hate the weapon degradation in Breath of the Wild, and that's you can debate about that, but I personally don't like it. I don't like it. Probably because of that, and probably because of how stiff Link is in combat, I don't like combat in Breath of the Wild. It's not fun to me. So, and of course, you can.
There seems like more flair in there.
There's definitely more flair in Genshin Impact. It's much more of an action kind of RPG combat feel, where you're meant to sort of get up in the enemy's face and wail on them, and you have elemental moves and then super moves you can spam and things like that. And it's really, I mean, that's one of the cool things about the game, is that you have all these different characters, and there are some that you get, as part of the main story. So it's not like you have to get all of your characters through gacha. So you do get some of those, but I mean, I've amassed a collection of like a little bit under half, I guess, of the playable characters already, without, again, spending any real money. Nice. Just by doing things, by exploring, by taking advantage of some of the timed events that they've had, and they're all really cool. Like there's a certain amount. There's like 5 weapon types: swords, heavy swords, magic weapons, bows, and spears. So characters have different weapon types, and those will behave differently. They all have different elements, and their elemental moves and their super moves change. But even a character that like has the same element will have a different kind of move than another character with the same element. So there's strategy involved in like which character you want to field for which situation, and there's an elemental reaction system where basically every element can react with every other element to create various different effects.
Oh, very cool.
So, like, for instance, if you have a water character, one of their moves will almost certainly be a move that makes the enemy wet, and then you can switch to a character that's an ice element, and if that character uses their ice move, they will freeze the enemy, which freezes them in place and lets you get criticals on them at a higher rate. So that can, you can strategize a lot with that with your team composition, which you can have up to 4 people in a party at one time. So you can kind of come up with different elemental combinations to suit your playstyle or the situation, depending on like what kind of enemies you're facing or what kind of challenge the game is throwing at you. And it's all very cool. It's all very flashy and it looks pretty. It's all kind of, that sort of anime, I don't want to say necessarily cell shaded, but it's that kind of sort of like, oh, this is anime style kind of character design and
kind of like how the latest Fire Emblem was looking.
Yeah, sort of like that. So
yeah, I keep seeing adverts for it when I'm playing Final Fantasy Brave Exvius War of the Visions. They get adverts. There's a way to get like some of the game's currency by watching just adverts of other stuff. So that's one of the ones that comes up sometimes. And there's a big, very Link in Twilight Princess looking wolf boss fight that looks like it's in there and gave me some Dark Souls vibes and stuff. But yeah, we can go into this in more detail. I know like Pete Leavitt's been playing it and Audra's got a review coming of it at some point. So, and you said you're still early on too, right?
Yeah, I'm still in the storyline for the first region, so I still have a couple of things to go through. And there's a patch coming. As of the time that we're recording this, it's coming next week. That's going to introduce more story and more characters. So more gotcha.
More to do.
Yes.
Yeah,
more to
I get it. Yeah, that's how they do it. That's how they keep you coming. But all that being said, speaking of more things coming. We did tease the fact that you're going to be talking about Cold Steel 4, since, again, I mistakenly thought you were on last time talking about 3, and you were so stoked for 4. You were just like, I need it in my veins now.
Yeah.
3 left you, wanting more.
Yes.
So, how is it? Was it worth the wait?
You were chasing the high.
So this is really hard to talk about because it's a yes and a no. And I would not have thought that I would be saying this when I finished Cold Steel 3. But unfortunately, there are some problems with Cold Steel 4, and I'll try to get into them a little bit. So just to sort of set the stage, Cold Steel 4 is the last game in the Cold Steel arc, which is the most recent arc in the Trails series. There have been 2 arcs before this. Cold Steel 3 ended with a huge cliffhanger. I'm not going to talk about details, but I have to sort of explain a little bit about what happened in Cold Steel 3, so if you're spoiler conscious, skip ahead like a minute or 2. Cold Steel 3 ended with everything going to basically. The bad guys kind of got what they wanted, and our protagonist is, I'm just going to say, Chocobo noise. It's bad. And Cold Steel 4 starts off right basically like a couple of days after the events of Cold Steel 3, where things are not looking good. The country that we're in these games, Erebonia, is on the verge of war with their neighbor. The bad guys have unleashed this mysterious curse that has sort of been the source of all of the country's woes over the millennia or so that the country that Erebonia has existed, for nefarious reasons involving a mysterious super powerful force called the Great One, which is one of the Septarians, a a combination of two Septarians, actually. And Septarians in the game's lore are these like super powerful artifacts or beings that are gifted by the world's goddess. So it's not a good time. Everything's looking bad, and our heroes are kind of scattered and have to regroup and find their leader and stop the bad guys. And I was so hyped for this because of the way Cold Steel 3 ends, which is very much basically just things are bad and then black screen to be continued. And there are definitely things I love about it. There are some really high highs to the game. There are plenty of moments in which I laughed and I smiled. I was like, oh yeah. And there's some really, really good hype moments where I'm like, this is amazing. But a lot of the game is kind of a slog to get through. This is kind of, I guess, the issue where the whole, we couldn't quite finish the story in the last game, so we had to make a new game, and we had to make it a full game, so we had to sort of stretch it out a little bit because Cold Steel 4 wasn't originally supposed to happen. The series, the sub-arc that is Cold Steel was supposed to end in Cold Steel 3, but they could not fit it all into one game, so they had to split it. And the pacing in Cold Steel 4 really kind of suffers for it because of how they had to stretch things out to make it feel like a full game. And it's not that it feels like it's short or it's not a full game. It does, but it just, the way in which you spend your time feels like, why are we doing this? Why aren't we moving things forward? Why am I spending so much time running around these places, not, kind of trying to figure out what the bad guys really are up to or fight the bad guys. So I guess I'm going to try and do kind of like I'm going to pull Rob Steinman here. And if longtime listeners to the show, back when Rob was our fearless leader on the podcast, he would often do this thing where he called it a compliment sandwich, and where he would talk about something good about the game and then talk about something bad and then talk about something good. He'd try to like sandwich in the bad with the good to like, end on a high note, but still talk about the bad stuff. So I'm going to try and do that, and I'm going to try and not talk forever about it. So let's see how well I do. So the good. Absolutely the best thing about Cold Steel 4 is the way it ties together all these different little threads from the previous Cold Steel games and the previous arcs in the series, even small things like secondary characters and NPCs and little relationships that were brought up that you could completely, ignore if you didn't talk to NPCs in the previous games. So it's Cold Steel 3 kind of started this, but Cold Steel 4 really kind of is the game where the Sky games and the Crossbell games and the Cold Steel games come together. Most of the main characters from the previous arcs make appearances and are at various different points playable, depending on where you are. They are pretty involved in the events that happen in this game, so it's not just Reen and Class 7 that's involved. It's the SSS from the Crossbell games, and it's the Liberal Bracers from the Sky games, and it's great to see all of them together in 3D, since their games obviously were not in this current engine. And like I said, secondary characters like the various other students, the non-Class 7 students from Cold Steel 1 make appearances, and their story arcs continue, and there's little references there. There are references to sub-characters from the Crossbell games and events that occurred during the Crossbell games. There's even an homage to an infiltration sequence from FC, from Shores in the Sky FC, that is kind of like scene for scene spot on the same, and the nostalgia in that sequence was so great that I had to actually reboot the game and do it again, because I was like, oh my god, they even included the cat as the decoy. And if you longtime fans will probably know what I'm talking about when I mention a cat as a decoy. So it's things like that. It's one of those things that Trails is really good at, because it is a long form series where every game is in the same world, and there's a shared timeline, and there are references to past events in previous games. It's the kind of thing that you can't do on other long running series like Final Fantasy, where every game or most every game is its own different universe. And that's always been Trails' biggest strength, is that shared universe and that connection. And it's really good here in Trails of Cold Steel 4. I had absolutely the best time with the game was these various different little moments. So that is really good. And I don't want to gatekeep and say you should not play this game if you haven't played the previous games in the series. But I will say that you'll get more out of it, and it will mean more to you the more background you have. Not to say that you have to play absolutely every game, but the more you know about the previous games, the more those little nods and references will mean to you. And because for me it was the best part, I would not have enjoyed this game as much as I did, even despite its problems, if it wasn't for my having played the past games in the series. So take that as you will. I'm not going to say don't do it. Just be aware that the more you know about the series, the more you'll get out of this.
Well, it's really compelling. Like, that's one thing I really like about hearing about this series, is just how long running the arc is. Because like you said, like, Final Fantasy's been around for ages, but everything's independent. Like, the only thing you can look forward to is how they're going to put Sid in there this time.
Yes.
Whereas, with this, that's really cool that you get all those references to the other games. But it's also good that it's handled in such a way that you don't feel like you're missing out.
The very cinematic universe of it.
Yeah, it's very much so.
Two other good things I'll mention before I move to the bad is that I think the music is better in Cold Steel 4 versus Cold Steel 3. I mentioned in my review of Cold Steel 3 that it wasn't that I hated the music, but it was uneven and it wasn't as strong as past games. And it's still, Cold Steel 4's soundtrack is still not on the same level as like the really high highs of the series, which for me is really like Ao no Kiseki and the first two Cold Steel games. But it's better than Cold Steel 3. It's more consistent, and there's some really good pieces on there that I love, and some epic battle themes, so I like it more.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with a lot of the music from this series. Like, what would you liken it to?
Well, what would I liken it to? Falcom Sound Team JDK is, some of it is very Ys-like. There's
okay, that's what I was thinking.
There's some of it that definitely has that kind of synth rock feel to it. It's not
more guitar.
It's not, it's not quite the same like intensity, and there's a lot of tracks that aren't rocky, but some of the battle themes, especially in like the older Cold Steel games, will give you some Ys vibes, and vice versa. There are some Ys themes that make me think of Cold Steel, or make me think of Trails. But like there's more natural instruments, more violin, more orchestra at appropriate moments in the Trails games, and there's plenty of like cutscene music where things are quiet or have piano or have things like that. It's I don't know. It's hard to, outside of like the Ys style for Falcom's Sound Team JDK. It's kind of hard to say, well, it's like this, because they're kind of their own sound. They're kind of distinct.
Okay, that's cool though.
In the style that they've created, but the composition of the team has changed over the years, and some of the additions are not quite up to par, and some of the people that are not there anymore, I miss them. So that's part of the reason why the soundtrack for 3 and 4 are both combined overall not quite as good as past games.
That's crazy that you can tell the difference. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was part of why Cold Steel 3's soundtrack was disappointing, because it was fairly obvious with the style that they were going for, especially with some of the battle themes, that there was just a completely different kind of feel to. I mean, it wasn't so like night and day, but it was not the same. So that's a little bit better in Cold Steel 4, but it's still not as good as past games. So
you're left wanting, yeah.
Yeah. And the other small good thing I'll mention before getting to the bad is that the battle system it's at least a little bit better balanced this time around. They changed they tweaked a few things with the Brave Orders and the break system that make it a little bit harder to kind of abuse things and take advantage. That is to say, it's a Trails game. You can break it to high heaven eventually, especially at the second half of the game once you start getting higher level quartz and better accessories. You can still break the game to high heaven, but it's not quite as ridiculous as in Cold Steel 3, where I effectively denied the final boss more than like 1 or 2 turns, and then I killed him.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember you telling us about that.
Yeah. It's hard. You can still do that to a certain extent, but it's harder to keep them in break indefinitely because of the way they changed things. So, and I've played Cold Steel 4 on hard for most of the time. I had to turn it down to normal for some of the early boss fights, which were very difficult. But I played it on hard most of the time because I felt like normal was too easy, and I kind of felt a bit more comfortable playing on normal in Cold Steel 4 this time around. It was still easy at the beginning, but I didn't feel quite as like, this is just not fun. So I feel, anecdotally, of course, I feel like the balance is better, even if it's still ultimately a very easy series to break if you so desire. So,
gotcha. So now you're going into the negative part?
Now I'm going to the negative parts.
What would ruin a sandwich for you? What would you put in a sandwich that would ruin it for you? Like a real sandwich?
A real sandwich?
Mortadella?
Are you allergic to cheese?
No.
Mock
I
chicken?
love cheese.
No, because that's definitely not it.
This is not a question I was expecting, so my brain is kind of just like,
what?
What's a sandwich?
Well, I really don't like diced onions or chopped onions, like on like a burger, I guess. It's not so much a sandwich. I like onions.
So there's some onions in there.
In general, but I don't like the crunch, I guess, if that makes sense.
So what gives Cold Steel 4 that bitter, sadness-inducing crunch?
Largely it's the pacing. The game's pacing is really bad, and I'm sure that part of that is because of what I mentioned, that they had to make another game to really give this the Cold Steel series the finale it deserved, but they had to pad it as a result because it feels like I can see the padding with this game. 2/3 of the game, like at least, feel really slow and a slog, and it feels like you're doing the same thing. You're basically going around the same areas that you went to in Cold Steel 3, trying to get all of your classmates, and then later on all of your like adjacent Thor's branch campus personnel and ally characters back with you. And the bad guys, while they occasionally stand in your way, they let you kind of go where you please, and you don't really do much in the way of like figuring out, okay, specifically what are the bad guys doing, how do we stop them, all that stuff, until much later in the game. And it's like the individual portions of that first 2/3 are still like, it's not that I hated everything I was doing, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, with the way that Cold Steel 3 ended and the way Cold Steel 4 starts and the stakes that are at hand here, basically you know from the get-go that if you don't stop the bad guys, they're going to basically cause the end of the world. And with stakes like that, it just feels so weird that you spend 2/3 of the game kind of cooling your heels and getting a full deck instead of making...
It's like a Zelda game.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is like Breath of the Wild, where you just ignore, Ganon, and just go run around, the Hyrule and explore. And
those Cocos aren't going to catch themselves.
gotta collect all the bugs.
Yeah.
That's how my partner played the game. It drove me a little crazy. Just running around the fields collecting bugs nonstop.
So I guess what I would say is like Cold Steel 4 is structured very similarly to Cold Steel 2. Almost in some respects like beat for beat in terms of like mechanically, like you spend X amount of time going places on foot and then you get an airship and now you can fast travel, and there are trial chests that you have to do where you fight with only specific characters and you unlock things when you do that. Like it is like sometimes the developments mechanically are like, holy crap, this is literally Cold Steel 2. But where Cold Steel 2 was one act, intermission, second act, finale, Cold Steel 4 is one act, intermission, second act with a intermission-like finale, third act, interlude, finale. Like it's the same kind of basic structure element, just stretched out and elongated. And there's only so much of that I can take before I start wondering, okay, are we going to do something about the villain and the end of the world and this war that's about to start that we don't want to start? Like, are we gonna do anything about that? And the game eventually does, but it's like right at the very end, and even the end sequence where you start to actually make moves against the bad guys, and the finale where you get to the final dungeon feels like it drags on, and then it just ends. And so, okay, I have to explain this a little bit because I think this is emblematic of the other problems with the game. There are two endings to Trails of Cold Steel 4. There's a normal ending and a true ending. And you have to do a certain series of side quests and optional bosses to get access to the true ending. The normal ending is super short and bad. I hated it, to the point where I can't believe that they thought that this would be an acceptable ending for anybody who did not know about the true ending.
Why even put it in?
Yeah. But here's the thing. I completed the requirements for the true ending before going to the final dungeon. I was using a guide to make sure that I didn't miss anything. I still had to watch the normal ending and watch the normal ending credits and then reload my save to get a text box telling me, because I did this thing before the finale, I now have access to a new path. Do I want to do this new path? And of course I'm like, yes, but it's like...
But what?
Yeah, and all it is at some point in the normal ending cutscene, the scene diverges and you get much more of an actual kind of ending. It's not nearly as abrupt. And I'm just like, well, why did I have to watch the normal ending if the true ending just sort of picks up and goes from there? Like, why do I have to watch this if I don't, whatever. So you have to do that. And then there is a bonus scene that you get after doing the true ending, but you have to reload your save and go through parts of the true ending for it to show up. It does not show up automatically for you after like the first time you do a true ending. And I'm like, why? It's like one of those like Marvel things where it's a credits like or a post-credit scene, but like, why do I have to reload my save to see it? I mean, I wouldn't even have known that it existed unless I had seen it on YouTube or saw someone talking about it on Reddit. It's not signposted or anything. It's just kind of like weird things like that, and I know that sounds like a small thing, but to me it was just that was the very end of the game, and it was like the last straw. I was exhausted by the time I got to even just by the time I got to the quote unquote finale, the start of the finale. I was exhausted, and then by the time I finished the game, I was exhausted. And that maybe doesn't sound weird because Trails games are every Trails game is a long, slow burn, kind of, very steadily paced kind of games. And fatigue, we would think, would be normal for games like that. But I've never felt this just done with a game in the series. And I marathoned all of the Sky games and both Crossbell games last year in preparation for Cold Steel 3. And then I played Cold Steel 3.
You would have thought that would have burnt you out.
Which is a hell of a marathon.
Yeah. So, like, it says something if I'm saying that this game exhausted me and I just wanted it to be done. And I did. So the pacing is a huge part of that, but the plot developments themselves are also to blame. Like, they had to come up with an explanation for everything and a continuation, but they couldn't necessarily develop it the way they wanted to, or that they just, this was the idea that they had. And I mentioned that there's a curse that's unleashed at the end of Cold Steel 3. The curse is a MacGuffin. It's a big MacGuffin that just gets used for every bad thing that any person does over the course of this game. And there is a source of the curse that you learn about, and you deal with that and that crap. But it just kind of, like, I don't know. It never felt on the same level as the reveals about, like, what's going on with the Liber arc in the Sky games, or what's the story behind Kia and the Azure Tree in the Crossbell games. It always felt kind of like a little half-assed and like they were going for something that was really cool and epic, but it just did not have the development necessary to really hit that note. I did enjoy the game. I did have a fun time with it for the most part, but it's really hard for me to ignore some of the elements of this plot and the pacing that just dragged the whole experience down.
It sounds like lackluster anime as heck. Just like that extra padding and needless, like, plot flip-flopping just to, like, try and drag things out. Yeah.
So that's the bad.
Yeah. Well, what brightens it at the end here?
At the end, for me personally, there were a few late game reveals that had my head spinning with a bunch of different theories and possibilities and wonders about what this could mean for the world and the lore and the future one or two, maybe three, but probably no more than two arcs that we're talking about before the series is completed. For reference, Cold Steel 4, after Cold Steel 4, we're supposedly a little over 60% done with the whole story. So it's probably going to be 2, maybe 3 more arcs before they're done. There's and I can't explain what they are because they're major spoilers, but needless to say, they had me rethinking what I thought I knew about various organizations and the nature of the world and what might happen down the line. And I'm very excited to see if any of my theories actually are correct and what that could mean. If I'm right about any of my suspicions, there could be some really good, like, mind blow twists coming up in a future arc or two that could really be epic. I could be completely wrong, but there's just some very interesting questions that get posed that are kind of like an aside from the main plot that you're dealing with, which is kind of interesting. Like, it's one of the most interesting parts of the game has nothing to do with the main villain in this game or the main conflict. It has everything to do with something else further on down the line. So if nothing else, Cold Steel 4 was good for all of the references and the characters from these games that I have loved so very much, and good because it's left me excited, or at least hopeful, for the next game in the series and the next arc, which wherever that happens to be after Hajimari, which we don't know yet, but I've got some thoughts about what it could be.
Well, that's not a bad, like, way to kind of end off this little review of just saying, despite its faults, at least you're excited for more. And, you're at the whole fool me once stage. Fool me twice, that's when, it's the shame on you part, I suppose. But that's okay. You're allowed to be still optimistic.
Yeah.
Hey, do you guys want to hear about a game that has absolutely no disappointing qualities, in my opinion?
Well, I was going to say, you played something that's, the next in a series that I know Caitlin is also very excited to hear about.
Yes!
Yeah, what's Yakuza Like a Dragon? got going on? Is it Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon? It's just Yakuza Like a Dragon, right?
It's just Yakuza Like a Dragon. Caitlin and I actually talked about this a few days ago, where it's kind of like, I think the reason why they didn't put a 7 after this game is because they are seeking a new audience with it. Whereas if they put a 7 after it, that people would think, oh, I need to play 1 through 6, or I guess 0 through 6. But the reality is this is a complete standalone. It's very, very similar to Judgment in the sense that there are, you're still in Kamurocho, there's still locations that are, and a few minor characters that are carried over between games. But this is an entirely new storyline. In fact, in many ways, it sweeps the board clean. And lets them tell a completely brand new story from a brand new location. So yeah, the big thing about Yakuza Like a Dragon, which I'm pretty sure that most people who are listening to this knows, is that unlike other Yakuza games and Judgment, it is not a beat-em-up. It uses no beat-em-up mechanics. It's a pretty darn traditional JRPG. It uses JRPG mechanics, turn-based battles, there is a complex and expansive job system, there are dungeons, there is full inventory systems where you equip, weapon, your armor, your relics, everything like that. It's a JRPG, and I think for a lot of traditional Yakuza fans, that's been a bit of a difficult transition to make. For me, however, considering that, JRPGs are my, I guess, first love, and I actually love turn-based mechanics. It's taking everything that's good about Yakuza and it's doing something that I enjoy even more for the central gameplay loop. So yeah, in my opinion, the game is thus far, I haven't beaten it yet. We have a review in progress on the website, but thus far, it's a pretty masterful game, in my opinion. I just love it.
And so you're shaking up the combat system in its way, and you said it's more turn-based. Is it turn-based, but still retains like its action elements, kind of like Final Fantasy VII Remake, or is it more, or like Final Fantasy 12, or is it
no, it's
like straight like left and right side JRPG setup?
Well, it's not straight left and right side JRPG because you do move around. It's a little bit more like Chrono Trigger in the sense that you can. Characters, you and the enemy are moving around the field a little bit, and the fights take place wherever you run into the enemies. So,
I see. So you can kind of game the encounter a little bit.
Yeah, positioning matters in the game. Like, for example, if you try running, you have to consider who you're going to attack. If you want to attack someone across the room, but there's a bad guy in front of you, if you try to do it, the bad guy will likely punch you in the face and stop your turn dead because they're in between you and the guy you're attacking.
Interesting.
Oh, that's cool. I like that tactic.
Yeah, other things like, for example, I think that this is in the trailer, that if you're fighting on the side of a road, for example, and you see a car coming along and you can time it properly, you can kick a bad guy into the street and then they'll get hit by the car and that will be the end.
Yep.
And of course,
do it.
Yep. And of course, they have the old Yakuza mechanics, which is, anything can be a weapon. So this is done in an interesting way. You have your usual attack with your usual weapon. But if there happens to be a bicycle beside you when you're attacking the guy, your character will automatically pick up the bicycle and beat the guy to death with a bicycle in the classic Yakuza tradition.
Yes.
Yep. So I'll get into the story a little bit. Like I said, I haven't finished the game yet, so I'll probably end up talking a little bit more about it next week. On next week's episode.
Fair. Although I'm very excited to see who's in Crisis.
Oh, that is very interesting. As I start, it's a bit of a running joke for every one of my Yakuza reviews. I start the story with the Tojo Clan is in crisis. Well, this time it starts with the Tojo Clan has fallen. The Omi Alliance has taken over Kamurocho. So the plot is almost, at the beginning, it's almost a mirror of the original Yakuza. So your main character, completely new character this time, Ichiban Kasuga, is a low-level Yakuza member of a very small clan in the Tojo, a very small group in the Tojo Clan. He has a very father-son relationship with his patriarch, and he just wants to be. He's a good-natured dumbass. He is a super friendly guy who makes friends incredibly easily. Everyone really likes him, and he's an idiot. Which makes it's different because, I mean, Majima was always very, very cool and collected, and Kiryu is just a stoic, just boulder. But this guy is always smiling, he just wants to be a hero. His favorite game in the universe is Dragon Quest. He loves Dragon Quest, and that is his inspiration. And that's the reason why the battles in the game are turn-based. It's because he even says this in like the first 5 minutes of the game after the very first fight. Like one of his friends comes up and says, "Yeah, you really kicked that guy's butt." And he says, "Yeah, it's funny. Whenever I fight, I just picture it like in turn-based mechanics. Like this is just how I kind of work." So you really do see the...
That's awesome.
Yeah, you see it through his eyes. And in fact, later in the game, this gets really weird when, for the first couple of chapters, all of the enemies you fight are just like street thugs. They just look like, usual Yakuza enemies. But later, I don't know if he starts having a mental breakdown or he starts almost hallucinating that whenever he gets into a fight, the enemies start turning into Dragon Quest-esque monsters. So, like, the enemies will now have glowing red eyes, or they will... I think the most creepy enemy I've seen is just a man dressed in a full garbage bag, no arms, just legs sticking out, dancing around like he is some kind of a chicken. And
it's like a weird take on the slime.
Sounds like a Yakuza game.
Yeah, it's a Yakuza game. I can't deny that. Anyway,
or that sounds like an enemy rated like Earthbound.
A little bit. Yeah, actually, that's a very good comparison. So yeah, the game, Ichiban is a low level Yakuza, and his patriarch asks him if he can take the fall for one of... I guess it's their captain, because their captain kills a guy. So the patriarch asks Ichiban, "Can you take the fall for this? Can you go to jail for murder? Can you admit to the crime?" And Ichiban, who owes his patriarch a huge debt, says, "Absolutely, I would be honored to." So he goes to jail for 18 years. During those 18 years, he receives a letter from his patriarch saying that you are going to be a hero in the clan. We will be there to greet you when you get out. And he gets out, and he expects to be seen by, like, his whole clan is going to be there applauding him. And he looks up, and there's just no one outside of the jail at all.
Rough.
Yeah, and he goes back. He goes back to Kamurocho, so he's been gone for 18 years. So everything's changed. Everything is modern, which is a really cool... I know I'm getting off track. It's a really, really cool mechanic. So it's 1999, and you're going around Kamurocho in 1999. So the Millennium Tower it's currently being built. It looks like the Kamurocho, like halfway between Yakuza 0 and in the first few minutes of Yakuza Kiwame. And then later in the game, you go to the modern day Kamurocho, which is used in 6 and Judgment. And it's a very different place. And he discovers that it's ruled by the Omi Alliance, which has been the Tojo Clan's opponents for decades and decades. And he discovers that his patriarch apparently betrayed the Tojo Clan and is now second in command of the Omi Alliance. So he eventually fights his way to his former patriarch, to say, "What happened? Why did you do this?" And his former patriarch shoots him in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few days later, he wakes up in a trash can in Yokohama, and he has no idea how he got there. He doesn't know. He just knows he got shot, but he has no idea how he got there, how he survived. He's homeless now. He starts living in a homeless camp, and basically starts to work his way up in the world. And he decides that he is going to genuinely be a hero for the people, and he is going to fight for what's right and protect those who can't protect themselves. Very much Kiryu, except this guy pictures himself in literally a knight in shining armor. And that's the basic setup of the game. So in many ways, it parallels Yakuza Kiwame in the sense that Kiryu went to jail for a crime that he didn't commit to protect someone that he loves. And then eventually, when he gets out, he's betrayed. Same setup, but slightly different. Because with Kiryu, it was his brother, not his literal brother, but his brother who betrays him. And in this, it's almost his father who betrays him. So motivations are slightly different, but it's a nice parallel, especially because it's starting an entirely new chapter in Yakuza. Because like I said, the characters, Kiryu is not in this. This is, I find, hysterically funny. No spoilers for Yakuza 6 really, but like Kiryu leaves for 2 years and finally retires, and 2 years later the Tojo Clan completely collapses. That's how long it took. He's been propping them up since 1988. He retires and boom, dead 2 years later.
Yeah, it's quite a legacy to leave behind.
Yeah. Now, it's usual Yakuza. You have a good storyline. It's hysterically funny in places, really touching and heartbreaking in others. There's a really high level of melodrama, which, I love. There are the usual, just mind-blowingly large collection of mini-games, some of which are brand new, some of which are returning. The business management mini-game from Yakuza 0, the Real Estate Royale, is making a return in spirit with a business management minigame where you take over a candy store and you have to grow it into be the biggest corporation in Yokohama, which is
awesome.
It's super fun. I really like it. And one of the things I love about it is that it's actually part of the story, because one of your party members you meet through that, and the way you level them up and level up their relationship with them is by completing the side quest.
One question I have for side games and such too, because if I'm not mistaken, the actual like big Sega arcade has shut down in the real world. Is it still shut down in the game?
Oh no, they're all still open, and you have the usual selection.
Good.
Virtua Fighter 2 and Virtua Fighter 5, I think, are in this game. Like somewhat stripped back versions of them. But no, all of the the usual arcade games are there. I killed a lot of time with UFO catchers picking up cats. Pocket Racing is now gone to be replaced with a full-scale Mario Kart-style kart racer called Dragon Kart. And, there's items in it. It's obviously not quite as big as Mario Kart, but it's the usual, like, the city becomes a kart racing game. You are in a cart, you can pick up items like bazookas, machine guns, things like that, taking out the carts around you. One of the things I really like about it is that completion challenges have always been a part of Yakuza, so it's like you walk a certain distance and you get a completion point, or you beat all your friends at darts, you get a completion point, or you beat up a certain number of people, you get a completion point. And it was always sort of on the periphery of the game, like you'd have a character who you could cash in these points with, but it wouldn't really have any effect. In this game, it's a part-time hero side quest, so you actually are like hired by this company, part-time hero, and the completion challenges are how you level up in this mini game. So the more things you complete, the more items and money you get, which is it's a really, really great system. I mean, the game is ridiculous. Like, items.
There seems to be a lot.
Yeah, like one of the screenshots I have in this, which I took myself, is Ichiban's main weapon is a bat or like a pipe or that kind of thing. Well, I mean, he can you eventually, it was the best weapon I had up to that point. You can get a magic wand. Let's put it that way. A literal gigantic magic wand that vibrates.
I was gonna say, is it like small, like Kirby little wand, or is it like a full, huge one?
No, it's a gigantic vibrator.
Oh wait, I was gonna say, wait, that magic wand.
No, it's a literal magic wand. You are beating your enemies to death with a gigantic vibrator.
Yes, okay, this is my game.
The size of a bat. It's amazing. It's really, really fun. Your companion. I'll tell you what really separates this game from the other Yakuza games for me, besides the combat system. It's in the relationships. There are two systems in this game that have never been in a Yakuza game before. One is the personality development system, where Ichiban has all of these personality traits. So intelligence, friendliness, passion, creativity, these kind of things. And you can level these up by doing side activities in the city, or by going to school. Literally, there's a college mini game in this where you have to write tests. Yep, which is just trivia. And by doing so, you can like level up these stats.
Tests.
Yes, aren't most tests. And by leveling these stats up, you can open up new character options with like conversation with NPCs. You can
That's cool.
You can get to new locations. Like, for example, if you want to gamble, you need to reach a certain level of style. And that's really
style
cool.
required for entry.
Yes, well, actually, it was, because the guy who was in front of the casino was like, "Ugh, you're dreary."
You don't look rich enough to play here.
Exactly. But yeah, so that's one side, and the other side is character relationships in party. Kiryu kind of came packaged with a number of friends and relationships, and the ones he developed over the course of the games were sort of developed through the bonds of conflict more than anything. In this game, you genuinely start to develop friendships with your party. And in fact, what's hilarious is Ichi actually refers to them as his party. To which people I ask him, they're like, what are you talking about? He's like, my party. This is my party. This is my party of we fight together. And there's lots of jokes in it, like life is just a grind, that sort of thing. Life is a role-playing game. But yeah, so you have these character quests, so character-based side quests, but to get them, you have to level up conversational stats with your characters. So the relationships that develop in this game feel genuinely more, friendly than in any other games, primarily because Ichiban is such a people person. Like, even his enemies like him. And he just charms the pants off everyone. Even though he is continuously called an idiot by actually all of them. He's really not a smart guy. He's really not. He's just the kind of guy who's like, all right, let's do this. He's the Leroy Jenkins of Yakuza.
There we go. Yep.
Yep. For those out there who like really old memes. Yeah, I'm just loving it. I mean, if the game is packed, it's a love letter to JRPGs. It's packed full of references and little touches. Like I said, Ichiban's favorite game is Dragon Quest, which I'm actually thrilled by. I mentioned this in the review too. It was very surprising that Sega got to use Dragon Quest so liberally in this game, because it's not a Sega IP. But they do. Like, they don't make it up. They don't say it's like Dragon Journey or something like that. It's Dragon Quest. And his love for it, he wears it on his shirt. And because of that, the game is full of references. Like on loading screens, for example, in the bottom right-hand corner, you see 16-bit sprite versions of him and his party marching in place, just like they're in a Dragon Quest game.
Great.
Yeah. It's the music is absolutely phenomenal, as per usual.
Better than a Dragon Quest game.
Yeah, it's better than a Dragon Quest game, that's for darn sure. And Caitlin, you'll love this, because I know that we've talked about this in the past. It has a full English voice cast.
Yes.
Yeah, for the first time in a Yakuza game since the original. And I've been switching back and forth a little bit. I've primarily been playing it with the Japanese cast, just because that's how I like to play Yakuza. I don't know, when I listen to it in English, it just doesn't hit me the right way, and then I switch it back to Japanese and subtitles, and it just sounds right. That said, the English voice acting is very, very good, and I think you're really going to like it. I think you're going to love it, actually.
Yeah, there's some really great names involved in this. Judgment had a excellent dub, and I imagine that the reception to the dub there was part of the reason why they decided. And also, I guess, this being kind of a soft reboot, it makes more sense to maybe go dub here versus, if they had decided to, like, say dub Yakuza 6, but all of the previous games are sub only. But yeah, some really good names here. I was super excited to see. Actually, some familiar voices involved from other games in the series. So so I'm really looking forward to it. I'm gonna play with the dub because Judgment was so great, and I'm a big fan of some of the voice actors that I know are involved. Like George Takei is in this.
Yep, which is actually exceptionally good casting.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good casting. I think you're really gonna love this game. I adore it. I'm having such a good time with it. I love Yakuza. Everyone knows that who listens to this, but this game specifically seems to be hitting me in a place where I have been able to forget a lot of the stress and panic and everything that's been happening over the last couple of weeks in the world, and really been falling into this game, and it's really, really nice. Although I do find one funny thing is whenever I see a villain wearing a mask, I'm like, good for you.
Yes.
You are doing it right, buddy. You are prepared for what's about to come in 1 year. I've noticed in some reviews, some people have complained about grinding, which is something that, lots of people do about RPGs. I haven't noticed it yet, primarily because I've been doing all of the side quests and I've been doing all the side content. So I think
But you got more to do, yeah.
Which I think it's not grinding because I'm actually playing the game, but I think it's keeping me leveled up to the point where I am able to get through without grinding. So yeah, do the side quests, Play it like a Yakuza game, where you say, oh my god, we have to get to the other side of town immediately or this person's going to be stabbed, and then you go off and play dragon racing for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some one of these days we're all going to get slapped in the face by the RPG that holds us accountable for all that stuff. I feel like there's probably one or two out there, but I can't think of them right now. But that's a different discussion. But yeah, thanks. You've given me another game that I want to be interested in. I mean, I already was liking the appeal of this, and especially after last summer's release of the Dragon Quest film. On Netflix and such, so which I don't know if you've watched it yet. I challenged you to, but we never got back to talking about it, whether you did or not. But I think that's relevant now.
I think 2020 happened, and then that kind of went away.
Yeah. Well, give it a watch. You may find some crossover with this, but yeah. So hey, I'd say we've got some good games that we've talked about, and I'd say it's time to wrap this show up. What do you two think?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're clearly still working out how to keep these episodes crisp and short. This was a good pilot for us to work things out, but we're still running long. So I'm gonna wrap this episode up, dear listeners. But thanks for coming along this ride with us, because we had two stellar big games to talk about, and one that's just kind of happening. And you'll be able to look at our reviews on those quite shortly, I believe. At the very least, I know Cold Steel should be coming up soon after this recording. You'll probably be talking about this next episode with Like a Dragon, and I'll hopefully be done Torchlight 3 by then as well. So look forward to all that to come up. Otherwise, you can get in touch with the podcast. Let us know how you're feeling. We've been starting to get some listener questions and responses and feedback in through email and such, so I'm going to hopefully bring those up on the next episode. But for this episode, we're going to wrap things up here. Either way, you can reach us at podcast@rpgfan.com to give us any questions, podcast, feedback, whatever. I want to start reading questions on the air again. And if not, I'm going to put our guests on the spot. Keelan got away scot-free this time, so that's fine, because we were going to have a simple question, and we didn't, and here we are.
It's all part of my evil plan. That's why I talked so much about Cold Steel 4, because I knew I wouldn't have to answer listener questions.
Right. But we will have some next time, so we see you. Don't worry, listeners. You can also listen to other podcasts. We've got Retro Encounter, we've got Rhythm Encounter, and we've got the Phoenix Edge podcast. You can listen to all those wherever you like to consume your podcasts. And please, to all of those and to Random Encounter, subscribe. Give us feedback and rate us. That lets us get seen easier. People who haven't discovered us, tell your friends. Tell your friends about the great music on Rhythm Encounter. Tell them about the ridiculous play journals and the schedule that Solosi keeps. Tell them that we generally share mindless drivel. There's something for everybody in our podcast at RPG Fan. For myself, for Caitlin, for Jono, thank you so much for listening. Caitlin, thanks for coming back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Anytime.
Maybe I'll come back again soon.
I hope so.
That'd be lovely.
You've got some more impacts on Genshin Impact to share, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah. And there's a few other games coming out between now and the end of the year that might want to talk about.
Well, I'll also be excited to hear when you eventually dive into Like a Dragon as well, given your enthusiasm already for it.
Yes.
Jono, thank you for being my lovely co-host, as always, and helping me get through this.
No, it's a pleasure.
We have a good time. We have fun.
We do.
Have fun. Thanks again, everybody, and bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.